Welcome to the Process to Ecom Profit podcast, where we know top-line sales just isn't enough to have the business of your dreams. Learn to run a profitable business online that doesn't run you.
Welcome to the Process to Ecom Profits podcast. I am really excited because one of my favorite people is on today. And I know I said, other guests, one of my favorite people, but Dan is amazing. He is the in-house for Amazon for Black & Decker for the UK. And, he's done a lot of things. He's been a reseller. He's worked in an agency. And so he's going to share a little bit today about his experiences and kind of what we can learn from that and take to kind of apply to our own situation. So Dan, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I know you probably get this from a lot of you guests, but it's so lovely to speak to you again. For those that don't know, that Robin and I speak a lot on a few different webinars because the Amazon, to find a real Amazon expert in this world is so few and far between. So we all tend to get to know each other quite well in the meantime. And Robin's positivity is just something that is unmatched in this world. If you get to see any of the other webinars that we're in, she'll always dropping a phrase or comment that'll just throw me off guard completely. Years and years of speaking to people publicly, and I just lose it completely when I'm speaking with Robin, because there'll always be something that I won't know, and it'll take me completely off track and throw me massively. So again, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I love talking to you. And I love leading webinars with you because it's so much fun. And I do love it when I throw out something and I can see you like trying to not laugh, like because I said something like it's kind of like now it's a kind of like a life goal. So, so can you tell us a little bit about how you got started? How does one become, the in-house for a big brand? Kind of what does that path look like for you?
It's a really, really complicated story, actually. So, I started out in real estate, estate agency for the UK viewers, real estate for the US viewers. And I don't know if this is universal, but we got paid really, really badly. We're talking like less than minimum wage, but because we got a lot of commission, it sort of balanced the things out. So I had a side hustle selling iPhone chargers on Amazon. And I've been selling on Amazon, since 2012, so nearly 10 years now. It feels like a lot longer time than that. But from my perspective, it's back when you could say I sell iPhone chargers that do this, iPhone chargers that do that. Very few people will remember that. Robin, I think you'll remember when we used to be able to get away.
You could do anything. It was it was like living in a Western movie.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the big way forward, and it's just been advancing everything across the way from there. And that's where I am now. Went into agency side with things, which was interesting. Got to see quite a variety of different accounts, and then building from there to see, you do anything from, there was one that was STD checking online all the way down to to phone cases as well. There's a massive change of those. So the variety, you got to see all sorts of different elements and building from there. So it was my job to sort of look over our 120 clients and then look where the growth opportunities were. That's where I got my commission basis from it as well. So I got very good at automating as much as I possibly could as well. You'll probably heard him. He just came in. He wanted to see what his daddy is up to, and I thought his mum would be back by now, but his grandma's just brought him back in. I had my little boy, and agency life just didn't suit everything that I was looking for, because a lot of my agency profile was going around the world speaking, which I'm never going to criticize. It was an amazing life. I got to live and see so many different cultures and experience it. But when you've got a family, I just couldn't do that. I'd like prior to COVID, in the 6 months, prior to COVID, prior to before COVID life, the 6 months before then, I probably spent about 2-3 weeks, full weeks at home. So it wasn't fair on my little boy. The opportunity came up with Stanley Black & Decker. The global VP of e-commerce reached out to me and said, Dan, you've pitched me a few times. I like what you're doing. Would you ever thought about going in-house? I'm like, yeah, you know what? I have actually thought about going in-house. So here I am now, heading up the marketing team for the UK side of things. Always have my sights on more, but it's always interesting to see what we can go from there.
Because I've heard that going from agency life to going to in-house life can be a little bit like exiting off the freeway. Because with agency life, it's like that guy, like as soon as you're like, all right, I'm caught up, and they're like, we assigned you for more clients, or like it just can be a lot, and and every client is important, and every client dollar is valuable, and every client looks at you as their one point of contact, so they're like, well, why can't I have those images today? And so to go from 120 clients to one client, that had to be kind of a big adjustment.
Yeah, it was. Agency life, like you said, is exactly that. You are constantly on, the world is constantly on fire. You have to do this, 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 and this, and then you've got the new business side of things to go forward as well. Right, so I've got to plan this, I've got to plan this, and then you've got all the interpersonal side of things that come into it, which people just don't appreciate enough. That it's not just about the product you sell; it's about how you are as a person. And even to this day, I still believe that people buy people over products 100% of the time. It's probably why probably why you're doing so well. But like I said, when you come in house, what I found was there's always a lot of processes. Now there's a lot of agencies out there with a lot of processes. I'm never going to deny that. But there's a lot of this is how this is done, this is how this is done, and this is how we do these things. So my job at first, I sort of went in with a sledgehammer. And was like, no, this is how we're going to do things. This is how I'm going to do things. But when you're the new guy at the bottom of a multi-billion-dollar company that's been around long before you were born and will probably be here around long after you're gone, as morbid as that sounds, you've got to appreciate those processes there for a reason. So sometimes when I've got my agency mindset and I'm like, right, cool, let's go let's do this. So when there's low-hanging fruit and I can see a competitor's got a weakness, I can go, right, this is why I'm doing this, I'm doing it quickly because of this reason. Other times, it's sometimes better to go slowly and work through the processes because those processes are there for a reason. So at times, it felt like I was banging my head against a brick wall, like trying to move a cruise ship with a paddle board. But other times, it's been a case of, you know what, when you get it right, the balance right, it does have the same sort of feel as agency life. It does at the moment because everyone wants something at the moment, but that's life. You can probably hear all the emails pinging in the background because I decided to log on with my work laptop rather than my personal one.
They're like, you're available.
Yeah, it's like, Dan's online. Let's see what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, and like I find, so somebody asked me, they're like, why do you still like working with smaller companies? Why don't you just work with bigger companies? And I don't know if you've had this experience, but bigger companies are great because they, you have a bigger budget sometimes, but like sometimes like that Shark Tank size company, like I'm working directly with the founder or, so like decisions are a lot faster. I would imagine with a big company like Stanley Black and Decker that there is just more layers of approval and like not as much of like, well, let's not rush into this a little bit. Let's make sure everything's thought through and approved correctly.
Yeah, exactly. From a previous standpoint, it's a case of, right, I'd look at a client and say, right, you need to sort these brand stores out. But if I say that here, it's like, right, okay, I've got to get the head of brand on, then I've got to deal with the trade team as well because it'll have been built by the trade team because it's been specifically for a promotion that we were doing. So it made trade sense. And the trades of what we do is still a lot of B2B activity.
Yes.
So these guys really drive that. So if I was to ignore their opinions, I'd be like, well, you're ignoring the reason why we do it. They understand the margins. I don't. I just say, opportunity. But it's, you're involving 3 or 4 people in a sense that normally back in my agency side, I'd say, right, do this, boom, it's gone. And it does have that. But like you say, you've got to have it because, to be frank, I've never ever had, because I've worked with so many clients, I've never had what's the nice way of putting it? I've never had time for tone of voice when it comes. I've been, I was targeted on growth, and that's what I got good at. The tone of voice would then, or the brand's tone of voice, should I say, would then sort of slip by the wayside. And then, I mean, you've seen it when that takes the drive. You have something that doesn't look cohesive. You haven't got that omni-channel experience. I could be on one of our retailers' websites, and the whole idea is, right, I go from the retailer's website to Amazon, and it's still supposed to feel the same. But if I've had my own way with it, it wouldn't in any way, shape, or form. And it's got to have that, especially in this industry and in this world at the moment.
Well, and there's just a lot more things to consider, in the way that you're presenting and the way that you're being brand consistent, and a bigger company is a bigger target for a lawsuit, so you do have to be a lot tighter on your legal. Um, Kind of going back a little bit, you started as a reseller. When you first went into the agency life, what were some things that surprised you from going to like managing your own account to managing multiple accounts?
Yeah, oh, that's a really interesting question. It's a fair shock to the system because I started out with the sales element of it. It was my job to try and bring more clients in. But then I became this, when people saw that I had the aptitude for it, I became the subject matter expert for it. Um, the other side of things as well is I felt the initial impact was I was really really protective over my account. So if someone had been into one of them, I'd want to know, right, why someone else come into these accounts? What's everyone making changes for? But you've got to have, when you've got 120 clients, you've got to let it go, right? You've got to let other
That
people do
seems like
stuff
an
because
insane amount of clients for one account manager. That's a lot. That's a lot more
exactly.
than we.
No,
It,
it's one of those things you've got to get it right, and it's because I was so precious about these things, and it wasn't wasn't just the Amazon side of things. That it was Google, Bing, Facebook Marketplaces and stuff like that, and it got to the point where you have to let it go. And the team since I've left has got a lot more people to it, and it's good to see that as well. But and yeah, like you said, it's just too much for one person, and that was the big thing. Been so used to having just the one account to look after and putting my heart and soul into it. But actually, I think you mentioned this on one of the webinars we've been on. If you live and die by every single mistake, you're going to die a lot before you're happy.
well, and so I was thinking like if I was going to hire somebody in house, it's one thing for somebody to manage their own private label account or for them to like be a VA on like one account, but like I think having somebody that has agency experience kind of helps you to say, okay, they've been able to produce results on multiple products. It wasn't just because they were looking, they had a product that was gold, that they got lucky on. It really kind of helps you isolate, okay, they can perform on multiple kinds of products.
Yeah, definitely, and
Do you think that
gave
that's
me.
that's true? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that definitely gave me the advantage coming into this place that I can say, look, from a history, um, look, this is what I've done with X, Y, and Z, under NDA, so I can talk about which clients had done what for. But I can say, look, for this wholesale brand, for this brand, I did this, and this, and they could see for themselves the impact that it had, and it just spoke for itself. And um, one of the big things I always used to say when I was working in sales is, you're only as good as your next sale. So the other side of that is, I can say, oh yeah, I've done this fantastic work, I've done this fantastic work, but unless you produce that fantastic work on that side of things, things to come, then it's not really worth your dime. And it's about bigging yourself up because not a lot of people do that in a correct fashion. They're all talk, but then it's then producing the results on the other hand as well, which is something that again, having my own store before I came into really helped me along the way.
I think that can lead us into kind of, if somebody's looking to hire help on Amazon or really any place, Facebook ads, their SEO, like when is it good to hire an agency versus when is it, time to bring somebody in house? Because for me, I think that when, an agency is really good when you don't have the budget for a whole person, you want to get, good quality talent. Um, and I'm not saying that there's not, like you said, people who really know Amazon are really rare. And there's a lot of people out there that are Amazon experts, but I can tell from what they post, they have not sold on Amazon. They don't have a lot of experience. And I get a lot of clients that come to me after they worked with those and the accounts are just a mess. So what would you say some of the advantages are of hiring in-house versus hiring an agency?
So the hiring with the in-house side of things, you can be more reactive. You can do some of the more cool stuff as long as you know what you're doing with it. you can monitor your competitors a lot more closely. We as an agency, you would always have processes and procedures in place to look after them. But if it's your job day in day out to look into this account, you look at these things in such a granular detail that you get to the sort of predictive analytics level, and that's where we all want to be. Conversely, you know what? If you're looking at the same thing day in day out, you can't see the woods for the trees sometimes, and then you might find an example. Say, like I say, I'm DIY now, but I may have found something in home and beauty on one of my accounts there that actually impacts DIY, and I would never have thought about it in a million years. So it's the trade-off in there as well. I'd say if you've got the time, if you've got the time, definitely do it yourself. Bring it in house, and if you've not got the time to fully understand it, even as an interim, have an agency, and because it's time versus effort versus revenue reward. If you look at it and you think, "Oh my God, this is terrible. I have no understanding." Right, that's when you bring the agency in. If you then learn how to do it inside and out, and you've got the time to do it, then 100% do it yourself. Test and learn. But if you don't have the time to do it, if you've got those big decisions to make, you then need an agency to do it, because this requires so much time and precision. It's not like the old days where you could just set these things up and just leave it. Amazon in itself has so many different elements now for then just SEO and PPC. It's down to even up to it's down to the granular details like email marketing all the way up to TV marketing. So if you've not got an expert in this field, you're going to miss out massively with it. So that's where the benefit of having the agency comes to there.
And I find a lot of, even companies, especially like that when you're working with like a founder, they don't have time to monitor Amazon Seller Central to say like, oh, look, they decided to change that policy and not tell us. They just don't have the bandwidth. It's not that they couldn't do it. It's just that if they do that, they're not monitoring their supply chain and their product development. And that's the thing that they can do. So I think there's a cost that's pretty big there. And if you bring somebody in, if you're like, oh, well, I'm going to bring in an SME, a subject matter expert to be our in-house, it's just really expensive to get somebody good, like 6 figures plus. My husband got headhunted, and then we're offering like 150 to 180, and it's just the US dollars, and we didn't really pursue it. So, sometimes those things are kind of like Trojan horse and like, oh, well, when we get in there, there's some, half of that's, commission or something like that. But, it's expensive to bring somebody in house.
Mm-hmm. It is. And like you said, we said right at the start, the experts are very few and far between. So it's a case of when you get the right person, they're not going to be cheap, but you're buying the experience. I always say to people, look, I have made every mistake Amazon had to offer. I didn't read T's and C's properly. I didn't go down to I didn't check my FBA stock. I'd set a born to run campaign on something that didn't really need to be born to run or something along those sort of lines. But, incidentally as well, I don't know about you, but I've heard born to run in the last 2 weeks more so than I've done my entire Amazon career. I don't know how much has come up with you lately, but like the text just coming around it and the buzz for it, it's just something that, like I said, in the last 2 weeks, I've heard more than I've done in the last 10 years around it.
It's crazy how in Amazon land, like there's like something that like people are like, oh yeah, I know that. And then everybody's like, did you hear about this program? I'm like, it's been around for 5 years. Why are we just talking about this now?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, there's been a lot of talk about it lately.
But it's exactly like you said. To get the right people, they're expensive, but you've got to look at it as your return on investment. If someone's giving someone a pounder, they're giving you 14 back. Yes, no, well, there we go. That gives you your answer. Could you have done that? Maybe you could have, but have you got the experience to do it? Versus, like exactly as you said, Robin, time versus effort. As a founder, you've got to be dealing with all the other stuff that nobody else. I just don't have the bandwidth to think about in any major detail. It's massively difficult to think about. Getting just the supply chain and the flywheel around these things. It's enough stress dealing with the marketing. That's a full-time job in itself, and some people just don't appreciate it as that. They see it as, oh, it's just something I can do it when I've got 5 minutes, I've got 10 minutes. It's not. It's a full-time job in itself, and that's why there's so many people that claim to be an expert in what we do, because there's a lot of good money going to people that aren't doing a good job, and then they come to people like you and me and say, oh, Robin, can you save me some some fools mess my account and not set up any negative AdWords, something simple like that.
Yeah, I mean, like we've taken over accounts like even for like larger agencies, and there was no negative matching. And I was like, who was running? And so the only thing I could think of is that they scaled because our space has been growing so fast that instead of like bringing people in and being like, this is the process that we run ads, it's been more like, you know, to run ads. Okay, here's 5 accounts. Go do what you want. And so some people are good and some people are bad. And it's going to take them time to weed those people out. But in the meantime, if you're the brand, you just got to sign the person that is just really good salesperson, that but doesn't have the stuff to back it up, then that can really hurt you, and it can create a really negative experience around agencies in the Amazon space overall.
Exactly. If all it takes is one bad experience, then compounded with another, and you're like, well, none of these guys know what they're doing.
Every ad manager has accounts that they do best on, so Nate's really good at doing a lot of different kinds of ads, but sometimes people are just good at sponsored products, or they're really good at Me Too products. Like if somebody really like was born and bred in the private label, sometimes going to a bigger brand that's in brick and mortar, they haven't dealt with buy box suppressions and all of the things that come with that bigger retail distribution. So even if you get somebody who knows what they're doing, if they don't have the right experience too, it's not always a good fit too.
It's like we said, you're buying the person over the products ins and outs.
Mm-hmm.
And you often don't get to meet the people that you'll be dealing with day in day out until after you sign the contract, right? So that's the trouble.
If you were talking to somebody that was about like the size of like Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, what would you recommend that they? I mean, what would you recommend that they do if they're like Amazon sales have been doing well, but we're looking to grow them. But I've been trying to do it, and I just it's just a lot to learn, and I can't I got the basics of it, but I don't really know what the next step should be.
Yeah, to me, those people should definitely be looking at bringing in an agency support because if you've tried to do it yourself and then you're not getting anywhere, if you bring in if you bring somebody in who's fairly new to Amazon ads, you've got to try and teach them. But if you are teaching them what you know, you're still not being able to grow. So in that instance, you've got to have an agency because you've got the potential. You can see that for every dollar you're spending in ads, you're getting a return, but there's more to go for that. Then it's all what? Surely the agency fee versus your ad spend versus your revenue justifies that.
And a lot of companies that size, they just can't afford. But the problem that agencies can have sometimes is that they don't have, if somebody's got 120 accounts, it's hard for them to be thinking, and I like, oh, we should just really reshoot those images. I wonder if let's A/B test these things, because they, what would be some tips that you would give people on how to get the most out of the agency that you're working with?
The best way to get the most out of the agency would be, know your own KPIs. Now, if you're not a founder and say you're a couple down below marketing director or head of marketing, some of those sort of lines, you've got to know what your KPIs. What are you going to be judged with? What's the yardstick that you're either going to be protected or beaten with? And that's what I'd always say. Right? Okay. What is going to get you your promotion? What is going to make you look good? If it's ROAS, right? Here's a plan that's going to show you how to get the best ROAS, and then challenge the agency to say, look, I am only going to get what I want out of life if we hit these KPIs. And it's best to be honest with them right at the start, and even in the initial meeting stages, to say to them, look, this is what my KPI is. How can you help me hit that?
I actually love clients that come in and say, like, look, I know a 3 ROAS is supposed to be good, but it has to be a 5 in order for us to be successful. So I know we can't get there overnight, but I need to know when you can get me to a 5. And if you can't, I need to know that. Or, we had a client that's like, you know what? I launch a lot of products. I really need to manage tacos by product. And we were like, great, we can do that. That's not a problem. And it makes it easier for us to make, if as an agency owner, I want to deliver what every client needs if they're upfront. So I think sometimes people don't want to say, like, look, this is what we need in order for it to be profitable enough. But sometimes if you don't tell that agency, a 3 ROAS or 20% ACOS isn't enough, then, they could think they're doing a really great job where you're thinking they're failing. And so you're just going to get more and more frustrated with them.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, which is a tough life, but it happens, and it happens to a lot of people. But it's about making sure you get it right, and you communicate it, and not just communicate it verbally, that you've got an email trail as well. Which we always, when you start delving deep into the paperwork, that relationship's going to end well. But it's having that right from the start. Plastered over everything you do, even like borderline tattooed across your forehead when you're on the Zoom meetings or something, something like that. It's got to be as clear as day, because if that's something that you really care about, then your agency needs to care about it as well.
And just knowing the metrics that are available. So if you're working with an agency, you don't feel like you're getting a lot of reporting, you ask them what metrics they're measuring and how are they, because they should be able to tell you, all right, so we really, the way that we look at it is we look at unit session percentage and tacos, or we look at TROAS and, sessions, or whatever it is that they're looking at, and make sure that their goals are aligning with your goals. And sometimes even, we've had clients that are like, well, this is what we need. And, if they want to get they want to get a 12 ROAS on phone cases,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to have that honesty, even if it means like potentially losing the business.
Yes.
Because if you're the one that's honest with them and say, look, this is not going to happen, and this is the reason why it's not going to happen. When those reasons why don't happen, when they go to another agency that says it does happen, some people, they won't like the fact that you said "I told you so," but in the other instances, I found that, oh, what you said was going to happen exactly happened, and it's one of these things that you win some, you lose some, but I'd rather have a fully honest relationship and say, look, I can do this, we can't do this. You spend most of your time dealing with the people that you've said, oh yeah, maybe we can do this. Where the lines are grey, you spend more time dealing with them, and you deal with the headaches. And is it as profitable for an agency to spend so much time with these people? Probably not. If they'd just been honest at the out front and said, I can't do this, you can't do this, it can't be done, here's why it can't be done, then you're setting up the questions for when they go to the next person who says it can be done. They say, right, well, they said this, they said this, they said this, why can't it be done?
And then you have to ask them, and then then you have something documented. And I would rather have a client be upset with me after an audit where I say, like, we just had somebody that they had like a beverage, and with Amazon fees, it just didn't make sense. Their margin was not, where it needed to be. And I was like, we could sign you up and we could run ads, but I think that in 6 months you're going to say, even if we did met all of our goals, I think that you're still going to feel like this was a lot of capital investment for very little return. And so I'd rather have somebody be upset with me there than having put, our retainer and the ad spend, percentage, and the actual ad spend and the time that it takes to approve content, and, like all of that. And then be like, wow, I still don't have what I was really looking for. And now I'm out how many thousands of dollars.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, you've got to take that initial punch, but it just gets worse if the longer you leave it. We used to call it swallow the frog.
Yeah. It's so Amazon advertising has been changing a lot more ad types, and we're doing a lot more creative on the ad types with sponsored brands, driving to like pages within the storefront with more design that are more like CRO landing pages almost, which I think is going to be a challenge for some agencies that have only, they haven't been doing listing optimization. They've only been doing ads, and the very bottom of funnel ads. How do you see the changes in advertising affecting agencies and even brand owners who are running their own ads in the next year or so?
It's become, I hate to use this comparison, but Amazon is becoming more and more like Google.
Mm-hmm.
In any sort of agency, you wouldn't just have the person that deals with your PPC also dealing with your SEO. There might be a bit of an overlap between the CRO, but they wouldn't be their sole focus. You wouldn't have that same person then doing the design or the creative assets for it as well. So you've got to treat this as if you, from an agency side, you've got to treat it as if you were servicing a client from a Google perspective. And this is why I see a lot of agencies that are in market as Google agencies or Bing agencies, doing struggling with the transition to Amazon, because they'll say, oh, we need someone that can do this, 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 and this. And it's like, well, that one point at the start is a full-time job. Where are they going to get the time to do this? And that's where you really need a specialist, someone that understands that, my skill set doesn't involve this. This is what I'm good at. We need to speak to somebody else that can deal with it. And it's the same thing with a founder. Look, let me say, if we're looking at, if you're putting up your own website rather than going on Amazon, you've got your product, you know what you're going to do with it. If you imagine you didn't put it on Amazon and you just put it up on your website, you'd find yourself having a copywriter, a technical SEO, someone, a dev to maintain the site, etc. Just to name a few. And you're looking at three, maybe four different incomes there on even if you put them on minimum wage, which you should never do for these people, but even if you did, there's a massive outlay of cost there. So that to me is down to, if the person who has the product wants to sell more, then they need to scale up in the right way. And you can't just sort of bundle 5 or 6 jobs together and then just say, yeah, here, this is all you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Even if you bring somebody in house, it's not likely going to be one person. The same person that's good at bid optimization is probably not going to be good at creative. So you're going to need somebody that does that. And I think that if you're working with an agency, asking, do they have a different team for creative? How do they collaborate? Because like our creative team and our ad team will get together. We have we have meetings where we go through and they say, well, these are the ad objectives that we're trying to meet, or this is the buyer we're trying to attack. And then we'll say, all right, well, we had a product recently that was really kind of their primary customer is a specific subset of the population, like a very specific group. And we said, what, we should change these images to make sure that they match the buyer, and so that people can see themselves. If we know we're specifically targeting and this is the only demographic that's converting, it doesn't make sense to have a wide variety of people. We just want to have this group of people that are represented really strongly in the primary images, and we can add those other folks in the A+ content, but making sure that but if we weren't working together as a team, if it was just projects that people were going through Asana queues, then I think it would be difficult to kind of meet those objectives.
Yep, definitely. And it's that insight right there that's worth its weight in gold, that for someone like yourself to look at the data and say, actually, what, we're only converting with one particular demographic. The rest of them are negligible in comparison. And it's a hard call to make, but it's like, you're spending money in these 5 different graphics, but only one of them are converting them. Or why are we focusing on the other? Oh, well, they might turn into sales. Well, we don't deal with mites. We want to deal with actual numbers. We want to deal with yeses rather than hammering on the door for repeated no's.
Yeah, there's always lots of different buyers, and people know whether they're kind of the fringe buyer for a product or not. So it's not like you're gonna shock them, but it's making sure that your target customer knows. What else would you say is something is what's, if you could go back and like one of your best friends was going to hire an agency, what would be like the top like 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you would say like when you're shopping around?
The first piece I would be is have your own KPIs in mind. I think we said it a little bit earlier. Know what you're going to be judged on. Those will be different if you're a CMO, if you're a founder, a CFO. Everyone's got their own judgments on these things. Make sure you know what your own KPIs are, and then people that you report into, what KPIs are they interested in as well. So the CFO, are they going to be interested in ACoS and ROAS? More than likely. Your CMO, are they going to be interested in new to brand and and impressions? More than likely there as well. But one doesn't always preclude the other. So know your KPIs and know what your boss and their boss's boss want out of it is the first thing before engaging with any agency. Those are the first things I would have. Second point as well, I used to have a very make sure your goals are aligned right at the start as well with the agency. You've got to make sure that you know what they're going to do, they know what they're going to do. A lot of agencies, okay, we can also do this for you. It's like, no, that doesn't interest me any way, shape, or form. But if they come to you, you've got to be strong and say, oh, well, actually, no, this doesn't apply to what we're doing. This is the key laser beam focus. A lot of agencies say, we want to be part of the team. We want to be built further, and that's really good to win people over and win them more business. But you then sort of say you end up in the routine of, oh, do you know anyone that could do that or do that for us? And they'll say, oh yeah, well, we sort of do that, and you end up saying with a lot of projects that we're good at versus what we are actually good at as well.
We get that a lot too. They're like, "Can you run our Facebook ads?" I was like, I mean, I could. You just don't want me to. Like, there's better people that you could hire. That and I don't want somebody to pay me to learn their accounts. Like I would rather them, hire somebody in our space that, or in the digital marketing space that I know is really good. So I'll send them to a referral. I think that's a really good point, because sometimes like, yeah, I can do Etsy, and you find out later like, oh, this was your first Etsy account. Okay, well,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is what it is, and like you say, they're paying you to learn at that point. It's like there's a famous quote from Richard Branson that is, say yes to the opportunity even if you don't know what it is, which is it's a very good entrepreneurial spirit to have. But in some cases, if you're wanting results, that's not the best way forward. If you think you can do it and you've got confidence in yourself that you can do it, then yeah, do it. But if you haven't done it before or you've not been successful at it before, just because you've dipped your toe in doesn't make you an expert. You can't just put on LinkedIn Amazon expert, Google expert, because you finished Amazon's free ad campaign. That's day one stuff. You know what I mean? That's yeah, exactly. Yeah, I did the Learning Console. I did SEMrush's email marketing campaign course. I'm now an expert in it. I sat on Robin's course and did my Amazon training, which actually, to be fair, I did after I got that, and I still actually learned quite a lot there. So you would be on your way to being an expert by sitting on Robin's SEMrush course there, but you won't be a complete expert because there's different factors in there that Robin doesn't talk about, right? So it's just because you've sat through the training doesn't make you an expert. It's the years of adversity and things coming out of left field at you that makes you the expert.
Yeah, because like there's a lot of things that change. Like you used to be able to say great customer service. Now your store page will get denied because of that. You say antimicrobial, now it's a pesticide. There's a lot of pieces, yeah, that can be a little tricky.
You could end up, for not knowing those little bits of detail, you end up in a massive feedback loop with Amazon. It's like, right, I changed this, and it's like, no, it's still not good enough. No, it's still not good enough. And you get to the point where they say, actually, we're not dealing with this anymore. You just can't have it. So that's where the expertise comes through in, because the time to know that little detail could, things that you couldn't even put into Google to say, why is this not working? Because it's not, Amazon's platform is not built like that. It's a case of, actually, you know what, I'll ask an expert, and you know what, I've got to pay the expert prices, because that time you're doing it may take you 10 minutes to fix, but for someone that doesn't know what they're doing, that could be 4 or 5 days worth of work.
And even with an expert, sometimes that happens where like they changed the policy and they didn't tell us anywhere, and so they're like, something's wrong, and you're like, okay, hotter, colder, can you tell me what paragraph, what module it was in? But at least we reduced that. If somebody was looking to go in-house, they're like, look, I can't deal with this agency life anymore. Like, I am tired of always feeling like I'm running. What would you say, like, things to consider before they make that move?
One of the things that I had to consider was how my own pace of work is and how I am personally. The role that I've taken on now is fully remote, which is good for me because our head office is probably about a 4-hour drive from where I am now. And the reason I came in-house was because of my little boy, and I wanted to spend more time with him. So this fits in perfectly for me. Whereas somebody else that's used to working in a team, speaking on teams collaboratively, etc., you're going to lose that by coming in-house, because you'll speak to, I speak to my boss every day, but in some instances, there's people that wouldn't speak to their boss every day. You'd lose that sort of interaction. Um, and then be prepared to have to dig and learn things yourself, because you don't have that straightforward, oh, you know what, I've seen it on this account, I've picked it up, we've gone to learn. It's a case of you've got to learn, and you've got to see, and you've got to test, and there's going to be nothing to fall back on. It is all on you. I mean, depending on the role that you've got, but there's nowhere to hide. You can't just say, oh, actually, this is somebody else's problem. This is it's always at the end of the day, it's your head on the block, and you've got to be. Are you ready for that responsibility?
Like in some ways I think it would be so much less stressful, but then also so much more stressful because like if that product launch doesn't go, I mean, that's a problem. Like I mean, you've got to be a lot more vested in each product. Do you find that you have to I was thinking about people who've only done Amazon, like maybe they grew up in private label, they got picked up by an ad agency and they've only been running Amazon ads. Do you think that if somebody's thinking that they should take the time, like I was wondering if they would need to know like the more traditional marketing terms, like, and how traditional like Google marketing works to be able to explain kind of like why Amazon is the way it is.
You know what? I've only ever explained Amazon via Google terms, because I speak to people like yourself that know both inside and out as well. Yeah, that's a tough one. I honestly, I wouldn't know how to speak to somebody unless they'd had a bit of Google experience about Amazon. I think that's more down to my own personal failings. But if you were like I did, starting out with Amazon before you have any Google experience, there's you definitely would need to have some sort of training course first, just to understand, the phrases, even like just the basic acronyms, ACOS, ROAS, CCR, CPCs, things like that, which, when we've worked in Google before, these things, yeah, we know what these mean, but I suppose it's like putting someone in a fourth year medical degree that's not even done the first year. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's just hard to explain it. Or would they come to you as something that's new in the Google space because they read about it? Like, I had a client who was like, "Tell me about Myrrh and Amazon." I was like, "Wow, I mean, if I wasn't on PPC chat, I probably because that's not a term that we use in the Amazon space.
Mm-hmm.
Like you would look like you didn't know what you were talking about because the
Exactly.
vernacular is so different, and like even be able to say, I know that like on Google PPC, SEM and SEO are not tied, but here they are tied. Like I think it would be difficult to get buy-in from the team if you didn't have at least like the foundational pieces to have that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the easiest thing for me to explain to people is, oh, what's it like doing Amazon PPC? It's like, yeah, it's like doing Google PPC like 5 years ago.
Yes, yes. Well, and that's
and
why I think it's good to know Google too, is because people are like, why do you care about Google? I'm like, because we're following Google's evolutionary path. And so if I want to sneak peek in what the next chapter is, I just go look over here and there's the next chapter.
Exactly. And it's to be fair, it's what I do in the UK, because the UK Amazon market is basically the result of what's worked well and what's worked badly in the US. So I can say to we need to be prepared for this, and this, and like, well, it's not even on our radar yet. Well, it's not now, but it will be in 6 months.
Yeah. And it's an advantage, but then also you also don't get the fun new toys until everybody's already learned a little bit about them.
Exactly, and they've then gone into the variations of a minute detail, and you're like, oh yeah, this is they know this bit inside and out, and I'm kind of not even on the big part of it yet. It's kind of like I'll have the so how out of play I am at the moment. I was trying to think, I was gonna say iPhone 13, but I've just been given the iPhone 12 or something like that.
Yeah, but I think that, you have such a great perspective on things, and sometimes you can see kind of our marketplace with a little bit more objectivity because, you're not kind of like in it all of the time. So, I mean, and you're still really active in everything. So I always love getting to talk to you. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Best way to get hold of me is either on LinkedIn. I'm Dan Saunders on there. I think I'm the only Dan Saunders on there. I damn well better be. I know I'm the only Dan Saunders that comes up when you Google me now. There used to be an Australian bartender that got eaten by a shark that used to outrank me, but I've done my best to catch catch that? Well, just to prove I didn't. So I'm here, and all in one piece. Even though it's, you can probably tell that I'm not in Australia because I'm wearing like a massive duffel coat sort of level of jumper.
And
Or
you just said
at Dan
jumper.
Saunders 86. Yeah, jumper. There we go. Yes, exactly that. Instead of sweatshirt, which it actually says on the back of this, it's actually a sweatshirt. But yeah, also on Twitter at Dan Saunders 86.
Thank you so much for coming. I love getting to talk to you. I'm so excited when we're going to lead a webinar together. So if you're not following like the SEM Rush webinars, make sure you're on that list so you can get into those as well. We're going to go ahead and go into our 5-minute fix, and we hope that you have a wonderful week. This is Robin Johnson with your 5-minute fix. Today, I want to talk to you about price elasticity on Amazon. A lot of times, manufacturer will come to us and say, okay, this is our price on our other channels, and we need to match that price. But we're concerned that maybe the FBA costs are too high, or we want to see, maybe our competitor's price is too low. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how do you test pricing on Amazon. So the easiest way that we recommend doing price testing is when you're moving up, to move up slowly in increments. The reason for this is if you move too quickly, Amazon will sometimes suppress your buy box, which means that it will be more difficult for customers to buy your products. So I would do small increments on the way up. And if you're testing a lower price, rather than lowering the price for a period and then raising it back up, this can cause buy box suppression issues that we just talked about. So what I would recommend instead is to use a clippable coupon. The thing about clippable coupons is they do cost 60 cents per redemption, but they show up in your ads. They show up on the SERPs, or the search engine result pages. So you can see, it can help with click-through rate, and it can help with conversion. So it can provide a little extra incentive, and you can see how much faster things move when they're on that discount. The same thing applies when you're pricing things up, and you're trying to see if you can increase the price to cover maybe an increase of cost to you as the manufacturer or the reseller. Now, the way you would do that is you're slowly increasing the price. You may make sure you mark down what days you increase the price and at what increments. And then you also want to be watching the detailed sales traffic report by child. And you want to see at one point, do you start to see traffic drop? At what point do you start to see conversion drop? So once you start to hit those points, that tells you where the price elasticity is for your specific product. Especially if your product is in demand and there's not a lot of other alternatives available, you might find that you have a price elasticity of maybe 20 or 30%, where you can mark it up significantly over the retail value, especially during peak seasons. However, if you're in a commodity where a lot of the buying decision is going to be based off price, you might find that you have a lot less price elasticity. So as you're testing price elasticity, we recommend that you start with clippable coupons to go down, and then when you're moving up, increase that slowly over a period of several days.
Thank you for listening to the Process to Ecom Profits podcast. Make sure you subscribe to get updates for new episodes. Leave a review, and one lucky winner each month will win a 1-hour call with your choice of our hosts, a value of over $300. Keep listening to hear the winner announced on the first show of the month. You can contact our hosts by using the Contact Us form at processtoecomprofits.com. You can also find the contact information of our hosts and show guests in the show notes for each episode.